Well, there's my bunch. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good, 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 good. It's good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Seems like it's been a while. I guess it has been a while. You know, we've only got 2 more meetings after this. I can't believe it. The spring's already gone. Already gone. Y'all gonna be in 605 this summer. Looks like everybody's gonna get all their evidences finished up for this semester, and some of you are already working on them for next. Megan's got hers. She's already got the cap 1 and 2 done. And so she's already got her interviews done on task 2. So she's the star of the week for the evidence work. So congratulations to Megan.
Dr. Lamb, I have a quick question about that. Is it okay if we use some of the narrative that we have in our other evidences?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's a good idea. Because it's asking you for the same things, just like we use stuff in the OMA. From the APTEL and the OMA, absolutely. Your background, your schedules, everything, all that cultural stuff. Yeah, just copy and paste. Don't reinvent the wheel. School administrators, copy and paste is your friend. Couldn't be better. All right. I see about everybody's here. Let me get me something to drink. I know none of them's with us, but I want to shout out last night's group. They did a great job on their presentations. I was very pleased, and so I know y'all will do as well or better. So let's talk about our stars of the week. Again, Megan is our star of the week on. She's already completed task 2 of the CAP and has moved on to task 3. So here's the things that caught my eye. Liz and last night's group talked again about making sure your fundraising fits your school community. And I would go on to say, if you can sell big ticket items, you don't have to sell near as many. But if your community can't afford big ticket items, I told you, saw a sign in the yard in my community for Huff High School in Cornelius in Lake Norman. They're selling mattresses. Cheapest mattress they got is $300. The most expensive is $1,000. How many of you work in communities where they can afford $1,000 mattress? So make sure and it's always best if you can do fundraisers that bring the community in, events at your school, especially if they're like for a team or a group. If you can tell them, we're going to use this money to do this, that really helps too. Amy pointed out some dangers in fundraising, put little kids out going door to door. That's not smart. That's a good point. And also, with every kid in the world's got an allergy now. It's selling anything with nuts or berries in it. Got to be careful about that kind of stuff. Melody pointed out, and I like this one, a lot of things we do in school that don't present as fundraisers are actually fundraisers. Pictures are a biggie. Book fairs, things like that. Now, I partner with different Title I schools at Christmas time and do pictures with Santa. We partner with Scholastic book fairs. We get classroom sets of books for schools. We do pictures with Santas. We make a lot of money on pictures with Santa. Families come in and have their pictures made, their Christmas pictures. Have a company come in and do that. And they'll do it at a low cost. Things like that builds community support for your school. And so those were the people who talked about fundraising. Linda talked about never allow parents to handle money and fundraising. That's a great point. Just take the temptation away from them. And you got to handle money the same as school money. It's got to be receipted every day and deposited at the end of the day. Can't go home or stay at school. But that's a good point, Linda. Never let parents handle money if you can help it. And also, a lot of folks are doing these virtual fundraisers now, GoFundMe and what's the one where you scan the QR code fundraisers. Make sure that those are approved vendors and understand that they get a big cut of the money. And that if you raise $100, you don't get $100. And you've got to account for that money in terms of what that service charge that they put on you to collect that money. Otherwise, you come up short, and you have to make sure that they're approved, and the district knows that they're going to take anywhere from 10% to 25% of the money that you raise. That's got to be understood up front. That QR code business, when I set one up for Little Bulldog Backpack for the 2 elementary schools, the Title I kids in Boiling Springs, what I found is if I would pay a fee, they didn't take near as big a cut. So all that's got to be factored in your fundraising. So I think that's pretty much everything on fundraising. Jasmine talked about, she made an indirect point that teachers need a bigger voice in hiring who they got to work with to make sure that they know who they are and they can get along with them. I think that's if we went back to Todd Whitaker from last semester in the APTEL, that's the pinnacle of teacher school-wide leadership, is that you get to sit on the hiring committee. If your school doesn't do that, I think they're missing an opportunity to get people in that might stay longer and be accepted and have a better chance of retaining some of these new people. Larry said you need to look for a good culture fit in hiring. That's exactly right. I used to be accused of trying to run people off during the interview process. And they said, well, why'd you tell them all that? Because I wanted them to know what the deal was. If you'll remember, I told you before, the movie A League of Their Own with Tom Hanks and Gina Davis. You remember what Tom Hanks said? No crying in baseball. Well, there's no crying in the school business. We need to get people who know what they're getting themselves into. And that their ethic matches our ethic, what they expect to do every day. That's Getzel's Guba social systems model of school, is what we need for you to do every day has to be what you want to do every day. And if we hire you under false pretenses, we've been having that problem at Gardner Webb lately. We've been hiring people and telling them during the hiring process, you only have to do 10 office hours a week. And so people who don't live nearby have been taking jobs and thinking, well, what I'll do is I'll come in, drive in one day. I'll get a room and spend the night, do the next day, and then I'll go home. That's not how it works. They want it to be over 3 days, and it can't be on any of their meeting days. Wednesday's a meeting day. So what they really need to say is, you got to be here 4 days a week minimum. And if you don't teach weekend classes, we expect you to be here 5 days a week. That is correct. I do Tuesday through Friday on campus every week because I teach Saturday and Sunday classes in the doctoral program. And so I don't come in on Mondays unless we got some special event, but that's because that's my only day off every week is Mondays. They don't tell you that part. And so there's a picture hanging in the conference room in Craig Hall, the College of Education building upstairs. Adjacent to my office is a conference room. That picture was taken in 2019, 5 years ago. There's 17 faculty members in that picture. 10 of them have gone since then, and they've hired 10 more, and they've gone during that 5-year interim. So since 2019, 20 people on the faculty of 17 have come and gone, more than we have. And the biggest issue, we hired a lady out of Atlanta, and she was trying to commute out of Atlanta. Then we hired a lady out of Durham, and she was trying to commute out of Durham. Now they're trying to hire a fellow out of Columbia, South Carolina. He won't be able to get there every day and then get back home if he's got evening classes. So we need to be more honest, and we need a culture fit. We need to tell people what they're getting themselves into. So Larry, that was a good one. That was a good point to point out. I like that LaShonda was in a meeting with the school improvement team and reminded them that the budget should support the goals of the school improvement plan. Don't just buy stuff. You need to support your academic programs. Don't just buy more things, playground equipment or whatever. That's not what you, if you want to have a fundraiser for that, that's one thing. But don't take the school's money and buy things with it when you and not support your school improvement plan. So that was a good one. LaShonda, you want to tell us about that meeting?
It got a little intense simply because for me, I'm SIC chair, grade level chair, and then being in the program, I ask a lot of questions and things now, and it's like my principal kind of looks at me a little funny because I start to quote you in my meetings, and I said if we're gonna spend money, we need to spend money correctly. And to me, I feel like we're just throwing out money that we don't have. Across the state budget, everybody money was decreased. But it's like, okay, hey, we have a little bit of money. I want to do this. I want to do that. It makes no sense. We need supplies. We need more materials, yet and still, you take $14,200 and you put it on a field trip that nobody agreed to. And the response was, oh, well, I done spent it now. I didn't have to tell you all. And I said, no, 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 no. That's not what we do. I said, because I'm going to be learning incorrectly and I don't want to get dinged when it's my time to sit in that seat. So you kind of have been getting me in trouble, Dr. Lane.
Good. That's good. I don't know if y'all can tell. I'm a pretty big fella. I'm old, but I'm still tough. I'd rather fight than eat. So that's a good thing.
Look, I'm not that big, but this class has been very insightful. I find myself doing a whole lot of watching now. I find myself taking my book to class. I'm walking around, with my binder, different things like that. And I'm saying, okay, no, this is breaking some rules. This is breaking some laws. So I'm kind of in a unique situation. My husband is a principal. So I find myself coming home asking a lot more questions because I'm understanding more now. And it's just been a lot different this semester. I've truly enjoyed this class.
Thank you, LaShawn. This is supposed to be an operational class. We're supposed to learn how to do things the right way so that when we get out there, we're not the village idiot and we don't end up losing our house or our job or, our freedom because we back into something that we didn't know. There's a lot of rules and laws. And the thing about it is, as I've told you before, you can do it for years, but then when you get caught, you have no excuse. And, the problem with misspending money is that you don't get to do that but one time and bad things happen to you. So, we always have to maintain an instructional focus and we have to keep that focus on that school improvement plan. It is our roadmap for our school. The master schedule and the budget must support that school improvement plan that's at the top. That's our job every year. Every principal has to produce one every year, every school, and you have to follow that. And at the end of the year, they sit down with you from the central office, whoever evaluates you, and you look at those goals on that school improvement plan, and you have to be able to say, we made this progress toward that or we didn't. You can't just show up every day, bell ring, go to class, bell ring, go to next class. You gotta, you gotta be intentional about, we're here for instruction and for student achievement. And everything that we do has to point to that. We have to be champions for kids. That's the whole notion. So I'm glad that you got the opportunity. In last night's class, Josh got to sit in on the district-wide budget meeting with his principal. And he was amazed that they went through the budget line by line. And the principal had to be able to answer any questions that they had without, sitting there trying to flip through pages. That they want to know what you're going to do with that money. But LaShonda's exactly right. Some field trip that has questionable educational value or stuff that we need to have instruction every day. That's a pretty simple choice. I believe your school improvement plan says that you need to be spending on the instructional, not on field trips. Now, if you want to have a fundraiser, the parents want to have a fundraiser to go to Camp Thunderbird, that's down Jeff's part of the world, down at the Buster Boy Bridge going out of North Carolina into South Carolina on Highway 49. There's a camp down there. It's a science camp. It's called Camp Thunderbird. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I was a parent volunteer at Davidson IB for 15 years, and took my trailer and hauled them all down there because my wife was a lead teacher and curriculum specialist there. It was wonderful, but the money was raised separate from the school budget to pay for the parents did that to pay for those kids to go. It did not take away from the instructional program. They'd go zip lining and canoeing. It was right there on the bank of Lake Wiley. Literally on the bank of Lake Wiley. It's great. It's great. And they've got science set up. It's wonderful. It's like one big live skis kit. If any of you know what an elementary skis kit is for science, it's wonderful. Except it's very expensive. Those rich people in Davidson, they just shelled out and paid for their kids to go. And it didn't come from the school budget. But if you got to choose between the two, LaShonda's exactly right. You better choose the school budget to support the instructional program. Jasmine talked about keeping your building safe to keep accident claims down. I've told you the story. The fellow got hurt real bad over Metro School is a public separate in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. They have severe and profoundly disabled kids. They built them a new facility, so they moved the Morgan kids over to their building. Morgan are the behaviorally challenged kids. Problem was they didn't upfit the building correctly, and they were using Tommy probably knows this. They were having one of those. They were trying to use closet kind of places for isolation rooms, small storage rooms, and didn't have the proper kind of door on one of those things. And the kid was fighting them, and ended up the kid slammed the door or got the door and leveraged the fellow and about tore his arm off. Using buildings and facilities other than what their intended purpose will get you in trouble too. One of the students last night, they're using the science lab for storage. That's not a good thing either. But keep your building safe, and it cuts down your legal exposure and also the workman's comp costs for your district. That's a good point. Yeah. Glenda hit one in her number 15 that saddens me greatly. But it's a sign of modern times, this notion of non-custodial parents and guardians and all that we have to be so careful now who we release kids to. That's a shame, but that's modern life, folks. And so that's one of those things that you've got to have a system in place in terms of who comes and picks a child up. You know, you really have to make sure that everybody knows what the system is, everybody's informed. Make sure you're sharing all plans and documents, and that's just another one of those plans you need to have. If somebody other than the non-custodial parent that you're aware of comes to pick a kid up, don't be so quick just to let the kid jump in the car and leave with them. That's unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes. Especially exceptional children. You got to be really careful with them. Glenda pointed out also, I like this one too, that you need to have your SRO. You hear me tell all the time, call the law. Have your SRO when you get a report of sexual harassment. Have the SRO set in. You've heard me tell you this before. Because as soon as they say, well, he touched me or grabbed me, it's no longer sexual harassment. Now it may be sexual assault. You are not qualified to do sexual assault investigations. So you got to be real careful with that. So it's always a good idea to have your SRO setting in. But anything sexual, we've covered that a dozen times, but that's a good reminder. Speaking of keeping teachers off workman comp, Larry made a good point about, working with your teachers not to jump into fights. I told you the worst whipping I ever had in my life, and I played major college football. I've done a lot of things. Went to basic training in the Army. Everything I've ever done. Worst whipping I ever had was 2 9th grade girls beat me like a rented mule. I was dumb enough to jump in and my first year teaching and try to break up a fight. All the older guys stood around and was waiting for them just to punch themselves out. Not me. I jumped right in. Man, they beat me. You couldn't have laid a dime on me anywhere. I didn't have a mark on me when they got done with me. But there wasn't any such thing as workman's comp back then, and I was young and stout then. But I'm just telling you, teachers have a duty to not let one child hurt another one, but yeah, teachers are likely to get hurt. They jump and breaking up fights. What we really need, yeah, girls fight dirty. That is true. What we really need is to figure out a way to try to stop some of the fights. And that's what I know Tommy understands that part of it is if you got kids fighting a lot, it's the fight is just is the symptom. It's not the disease. And you've got to work to find the root problem on whatever that's causing kids to fight all the time. But if you do have a lot of fights and teachers get involved, they're going to get hurt in your building. You need to, yeah, that's why you don't want fighting, that and other things. Alicia pointed out that she got to see a budget with EC funds and how very specific they are. Yes, they are. They're federal. And they don't just send you, all right, here's $40,000 for Title I. No, that's not how it comes. It comes in line items. So you say, well, I've got $40,000 in this budget. I'm going to spend this on, no. You don't really have 40. You might have 2 here and 1 there and 3 here. They're very specific on federal programs about how you spend money. It doesn't come in a block grant. It comes line item. Block grant is you got $40,000, go spend it. Line item is they have lines. This is what you can spend this much on, this much, this much, this much. You really get in trouble on Title I on those parent events when you're buying refreshments and those kinds of things. You got to be careful on that kind of stuff because only a small amount of your Title I money can be spent on refreshments. So Alicia's exactly right. If you get to see that EC budget or any of the federal budgets, they are very, very specific. They're not block grants. It isn't just a lump of money. Melody put one in today, that caught my eye as a good reminder because this was an issue for us in Charlotte Met. You have to remind your teachers that your district has a social media policy. And stay off social media, especially mentioning anything about school or kids. That's a privacy concern. That violates their privacy laws. So Charlotte Mecklenburg has a group that monitors that, by the way. I don't know how many other districts do. Jeffrey, you got something to say about that?
We were reminded that of this year. All admin had to talk to their staff about that prior to the school year starting.
Yeah. 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 During my time when social media was just starting, my last year or next to last year, we had to let 3 teachers go because of things that they had posted on social media about their kids. That they posted about kids was bad enough, but what they posted was even worse. So remind your teachers of that. You got to be very careful with that. If you want to see a good newly formed updated Title IX policy, Alicia from Bamberg down in South Carolina, hers is great, by the way. They've done a really good job. That can't be very old because they've incorporated all the newest law changes in the last 2 years in it. They've done a great job with their Title IX policy. It's very comprehensive. So if you want to see a good one, you can go to discussion board and see that one on Title IX under sexual harassment. That's a very good job, Alicia, on that one. That's a good one. Melody reminded us again, the budget's supposed to be spent to educate kids, not on frivolous things. Alicia pointed out that our number 1 job is to keep kids safe physically, emotionally, and educationally. We have all 3 dimensions we have to worry about. And I think that's it. But those were things that caught my eye. Again, I love reading your post. I like it, especially when you share your experiences, when you've interviewed somebody, talked to somebody, watched somebody. Those things are intensely valuable. As LaShonda said, watching them and seeing what they do. Now, as bad as this is how I sleep at night. I salve my conscience by understanding that sometimes the bad example, you learn more from somebody who's the bad example than the good example. But you got to know the difference. Everybody won't have a great administrator, but the thing to do is watch them all and write it down. I'll do this when I get to be principal. I won't do that. But just watching what they do and watching the people react to what they do you can get a sense of how things ought to go. But
Dr. Lamb.
yes,
At Monday, sitting in our Title I budget meeting for next year, where most people are probably losing some money. We're losing about $26,000. We get about 240, I guess, at our school. But we're also losing about 4 teachers because our enrollment's going down.
yeah,
And we found out that we're going to be, the principal said we could only have 2.4 positions in specialist.
Mhm.
And so he actually went to the Title I meeting and the chief academic officer and the Title I budget people and said, I can't lose any of my specialists, PE, music, and art. How can I keep them?
planning.
He didn't want us to have to be between 2 schools. And so 0.2 of each of our salaries for next year will be paid out of the Title I funds so that we don't have to be split between schools, which then makes you feel valued
Yes,
that that your principal would do that for you. So it
yes,
was horrible to hear because you're like, or is he going to get rid of one of us? So that, but it was then he's like, no, we went with 4 people. We went to central office and we said, I can't lose these people. And what can we do to fix it? So that
Yeah.
was,
yeah.
he had that power to do that and the ability to trade out positions and trade out salaries and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where he had told me in one of our, well, what do we use this Title I money for? He said he would rather use it on people
Yeah,
than
things.
applications and Dreambox. I mean, he does
Yeah.
that, but he wants the people there that will do the best for the school. So
Yeah. And especially in the lower grades, a lot of times the specials are how your core teachers get their planning time. And if you remove them, then how are you going to get planning unless you just blow class sizes up across the board? But yeah, you need those people for instruction. There's value in what they teach, and there's also value in that they provide planning time for the core instructional people as well. I've often marveled at how many people don't understand how important the specials are in school, because a lot of times, especially for at-risk kids, that's the only thing that hooks them and keeps them in school is those specials. They love PE, they love art, they love dance, they love chorus. I was a middle school principal in a far western, really poor district, and I went down on Saturdays, I'd go down to the local community college and watch the kids play soccer. And people said, we didn't think you like soccer. I said, I'd rather watch paint dry. But if kids enjoy it, I enjoy it. I love it, because a lot of these kids, without something like this, they wouldn't be in school, and they certainly wouldn't be behaving in school. But because it's tied to the school, if they don't behave and they don't get their homework and they don't participate in school, they don't get to play soccer on the weekends. Now of course, you got the sports teams at the school and the other things, but a lot of those specials are the things that keep kids connected and keep them coming back. And so they have value in themselves. They absolutely have value in themselves, not just as, give the other teachers a break. They provide value. A lot of times kids remember that, and that's the most important thing in their life is those special classes. And your principal is right. You just can't lose those. You need those. All right. Again, keep those cards and letters coming in. Keep those discussion board posts coming in. I love reading those. And I live through y'all. I try to be in school once a week or once every other week with my doctoral students or my interns. I try to go to school, but I live my school life through you. I never cared much for school in the summertime because the teachers and kids weren't there. But when teachers and kids are there and things are going good, school's a good place to be. And y'all keep me connected to that, and I like it.
Thanks, Dr. Lamb. Is it okay if team 1 goes first?
I'm waiting on you. I'm just wasting time until your team shares their screen and gets us started tonight. I'm excited to see what y'all got.
Thank you. Go for it, Sean.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. So case study 4, it is Tanya, myself, Danya, and Caroline. So the first thing, let me move this out of the way. The first thing that we talked about were just our initial thoughts around the case. And I know we talked a lot about this last week as well. But so the parents brought up a concern that their children were suffering due to the special education students in the classroom. So we talked a little bit about the disability laws around that, the ADA and the IDEA, that ensures people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as those without disabilities. And then the education one guarantees that all children with disabilities receive free and appropriate public education. We talked about how the leaders must support teachers and conduct walkthroughs. So there was a big concern around the administration not knowing what was going on in the classrooms and not how their whole 90 minutes or whatever that time was utilized. Talked a little bit about FERPA, and again, just that the principal needs to know what's going on in the school, and she shouldn't have to go and ask after the concern was brought up.
Let me add right there. When those parents came in, the regular ed and the AIG parents, remember, the AIG parents were there on the basis of their kids have IEPs that have to be met. That was their standing in the case. What was the standing for the regular ed? The basic ed plan, that every child gets a basic. I had that. It's linked in tonight's Zoom session. I've got it pulled up, but I won't. So remember, these parents, they had a legal right to what they were asking for. Now, we got to be careful not to talk about other people's children. But one of the things that we have to understand is all these different subgroups in our school are covered under some law or right to that education. Our EC kids, FAPE, free and appropriate, basic ed for the regular, AIG, their IEP. And so it's not like we could dismiss them. Legally, they all had standing in this case. Thank you, Sean. Very good. And you've got basic ed there. That's great.
Yes. Oh, there we go. So we kind of, it brought us into just an ethical paradigm, thinking about who has the power in this situation, who are the ones not being heard, treating everybody equally with dignity and just fairness, thinking about which laws are benefiting who, the rules and policies, and is the decision that we are making fair and just, and then just continuing to reflect upon our own ethical toolkits and being open-minded enough to accept differences and practicing what we preach, essentially, allowing growth with everyone around us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it brought us into the next one: how might the principal approach this with future meetings?
So we do feel that educating stakeholders and transparency in general is important and needed. Revisiting the school's mission with the stakeholders during the meetings, any parent nights, really any opportunity that presents for you to interact with the community. SIT to get an action plan. Oh, sorry. Oh my gosh. Sitting to actually get an action plan. I'm like, oh. I feel that we feel that she should have gathered more information before meeting with Sylvia. And as the leader of the school, the principal might be aware of what is going on in all the classrooms. She should also needs to be the one making the formal observations instead of asking someone else to do it in her place. And then how might she also, just continuing on the last slide, she should meet with all the teachers and special education teachers to discuss their roles so that everyone has a clear understanding of what everyone's responsibility is. There should be some PDs on using inclusion models so that teachers and students are able to set themselves up and their students for success. Other opportunities for teachers to collaborate across the classrooms, because it seemed like different grade levels were doing different things. discussing the IDEA law and so that the teachers are required to follow, so all students are educated in the least restrictive environment, which is ideal. Since school is using the inclusion model, the principal has the responsibility to meet with everyone to share exactly what the model looks like, which is where the transparency piece comes in. And lastly, just to sum it all up, it's necessary for the principal to choose either mainstreaming or inclusion. And in this case, it would be inclusion. There are federal, state, and local statutes to regulate the budget for both of these models.
That's good. That's a good point there. So the question that I have on that one is, can we allow principals and or teachers to make the decision about which one they want to offer? No, because the funding stream follows the model that Danya just pointed out. That's a great point, Danya. It's exactly right. If your district is going inclusion, that means that they're only funding inclusion. That's 30% less. And if your district is funding mainstream and you're only doing inclusion, what are you spending that other 30% on? That's probably being misspent somewhere else. And so Danya's exactly right. Your model fits the adopted model of your district because the funding stream comes with it. That's what we talked. That's why I made sure I made that point earlier tonight. Federal money is line item. It doesn't come block grant in a lump sum. And if you use the wrong model, you might have money left over, but still can't use it to pay what you need to pay because it's not in the right line item. So that's why. And so, no, you don't get to pick which model you want. You have to implement the one with fidelity that the district has chosen for you, because we staff and we do personnel and staffing and budgeting based off of that model. So the next question is, we're going to do PLCs
Mhm.
to make sure that everybody knows what they're doing. That's that, remember from the APTEL last semester when you did that growth plan, there's 3 types of staff development. Now, what students, where they make the mistake, they think I have to pick one of those 3. No, you use all 3 every time.
Are you reading my screen for me, Mr. Dr. Lamb?
Yeah. Then I'll turn it back over to you then. There you go. I didn't even
yeah.
see that.
That's
Yeah.
okay. So the path that Eugenia should take, we of course said that she should be first creating the PLC team that can find those gaps, which we learned in
Yes.
the APTEL and the APSEL, and create
Yep.
the action plan. And if they haven't looked at the master schedule, which we learned about in the OMA, they need to do that and see where they can tweak or fix things where inclusion can happen with pullouts and small groups, and make sure that they're utilizing the correct amount of minutes for the reading blocks and the math blocks. And also we talked about that if there's not a survey like the teacher working edition or a panorama survey, then they might need to create one to distribute to parents and staff to find out what the concerns are and where they fall in the community as far as communication and those kinds of things. And then as the leader, Eugenia needs to establish the expectations of what an inclusion model classroom should look like, because apparently from the reading, she really doesn't know. I don't think. Other people may know on her team, but she doesn't. And need to provide, professional development for those teachers and the specialists in that group. Work with Sergio, who is one of the inclusion teachers, or he knows about that, the inclusion model, and what role the students have, what role the teachers have. There needs to be parent nights to explain what it is, what it will look like at the school. Maybe they could, maybe have a few short lessons in each core area, or a little something so that they can know what that's going to look like. Also, some bullet points from that is that she needs to make sure for the classroom in question, she needs to have been doing some observations. Obviously, maybe she hasn't done that. Have some conferences with a teacher, whether that's after the observation or the walkthrough, to discuss the strengths and areas for improvement, and what the concerns were based on the law, what the parents felt their students weren't getting, because they have that, like you said, they have IEPs also.
Yeah.
And then, give advice or create a plan for using those best practices with the teacher. And that also comes with the SIT team or that PLC team when they provide more professional development. And on the next slide, we is one point of view more correct than the other? Is kind of a reiteration of the question we had, but the law supersedes your opinion or your emotions. And that's been stated several times this semester. And the student's right to a basic education is your number one priority. And the IEP addresses that process to make sure that that is provided for the student. Eugenia should make sure she's supervising and evaluating the inclusion model. That could be more of those short-term surveys done with the staff, or that they can offer feedback and collaboration. And Sylvia, the teacher, needs to use a different approach with the students. The advanced students should not be teaching the lower students. She should be using them as teachers. There should be more maybe Kagan strategies or cooperative learning in the small groups, which the teacher is then facilitating. And then Sergio, who values the team of specialists, but they should also be working together to make sure that the inclusion model is successful. And Caroline, our wonderful friend who getting back from Japan, is not feeling well, but she's going to help us at the end here. We're so glad to see her.
And I thank my team for taking the lead on this. What kind of collaboration from the children family might the principal and teachers propose in order to improve the inclusion education program, to encourage an appreciation for diversity, to stimulate learning for all students? They could have a parent night, open house. They create an action plan that involves that parent communication. To have these events, an EC specialist, PD, family night about inclusion, education, educating the parents, educating the community for the need. As an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what model might Ismail, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create some harmony of the differences of opinion? The PLCs, the SIT could come up with an action plan for stakeholder efficacy. Again, the answer from question 1, educating is transparency. They must understand they have to buy in. Building that teacher efficacy, the leader must build that efficacy in that teacher. That's their goal. Inclusion discussions with the staff. PDs by integration program specialists, the MTSS PD, small group PD. It's important that professional development starts to unfold with all teachers, where the information is provided is content focused, incorporates active learning, supports collaboration, provides coaching and support, and uses the models of best practices that offers feedback and sustainable ability.
And then again, we just wrapping it up and reiterating the actions that Sylvia should be taking with the families in question. So again, communication is key, educating the parents on the classroom model, what the structure looks like at curriculum night in the beginning of the year, open house, conferences. The parents should be meeting with their teachers and learning what's going on in the classroom, portfolios and displays, achievements and class newsletters, inviting them in to observe a lesson even, and then some student-led conferences, maybe in the older grades. And then that was it, and just some references.
And I'm glad that y'all pointed out like we learned in the skip. You got to do the communication first before you set up the parent nights, because it won't do any good to have these wonderful parent nights and nobody shows up. That's generally what happens. We forget that communication piece. That short-term goal has got to come before that long-term goal. But you can see that this case touched everything that we've covered in this program so far, all 4 of our evidences. You see how they fit in. Now, one of the things I want to point out, you know, I'm a master scheduling savant, is a lot of the problem with this one was they put all the EC kids in the same room. Is that a good idea when you do your schedule? Absolutely not. Now, that may have been intentional, but more than likely, for those of you who have done a little scheduling before, they didn't have federal programs as their first priority, then state law, local board. What they did was they scheduled something where this group of kids is all together because they're in something else. They're like in band, a one-off class. And if you schedule those first, whether you intended to or not, you notice that sometimes you get unintended consequences if you don't put that first and make those scheduling those federal programs a priority. You end up with, and like in this case, one classroom's got no EC kids, the other classroom's got them all. That's not a very good thing, but you can fix that with your master schedule if you make scheduling your federal programs your first priority.
Well, Dr. Lamb, when I was in Atlanta, they used to call it clustering because the schools are so big. So for instance, it would have been certain years where I had all of the resource students or all the ELLs, or, you know, if not all, depending on how many had been split between, you know, 1 or 2 classes, because you just didn't have enough of the teachers as far as the human resources to bounce around to so many classes.
I got it. All right. So looking through my notes here, I think we got everything. But now here's one of the things that I want to hit on before we go to the next one, and I'll try to be brief here. Got to tell a story. My wife and I got married 40 years ago. We lived in a small town in the western part of the state, dry county, nothing to do. And so we took dance lessons. I know y'all are all laughing. I don't blame you. But here's the amazing thing, as big as I am and awkward, my wife is small and very athletic. She's 5'4", skier, cheerleader, ball player, very small, athletic, like the balance of a cat, the whole deal. Still small and athletic, even at her age. Which one of us do you think that the dance lessons took on, and which one do you think they didn't take on? I can't make this up. They did not take on my wife. I actually could do it because dance is based on math or steps or whatever. She wasn't very good. She tried her very hardest, and she had the physical ability, but she just wasn't very good at it. Here's the downfall that we have in schools. We'll do the whole group professional development, and then we'll set up PLCs and run those. But I do not know why, but we're loath to do the one-on-one when people aren't being successful. If my point is, if people are trying, we'll leave them alone and let them fail, because we just don't want to have those critical conversations and do that one-on-one that you've got to do when people just aren't getting it. Now, we'll put them on an action plan if they aren't trying, but what happens is if they're trying, we'll let them go. I don't know why we try so hard to avoid that one-on-one, that individual coaching with teachers who are not being successful. And sometimes it's not their fault. They're trying their hardest. They really want to. It's not a desire or an ability thing. Sometimes they just don't get it. It's just not happening. But we are loath in this business to address those people. The good-hearted ones that are trying their best but aren't being successful. Until you can do that, it's like I told you when we talked about personnel. Until you can let somebody go simply because they can't teach school, you can't be an effective administrator. Oh, but they show up every day. But you know, we got to have more than that. When we're doing something, when we're implementing a program that's as important and as specific as this one is, we have to have people that not only are trying, but are succeeding. And we can't hesitate to go to that third level of professional development, that one-on-one. We can't do that. but we're loath to do that in the business, and I hate that. I think a lot of folks, it could benefit a lot of people. I don't know many people who get up every morning who say, I think I'll go to work today and be incompetent. Folks really want to do the best that they can. And it's our job to find a way to help them. If it takes that one-on-one, that's what we need to be doing. But we just don't do much of that in the school business. And I think that's part of our downfall. All right. Next group, Amy, Jeff, Kristen, Letitia, and Alicia.
Yes, sir. All right, so we're gonna go just do a brief overview of the parent concerns. They are comparing their child's success to another classroom success and feel as though their children are not advancing as the other classrooms. And they want something done by the principal to go and talk to the teacher about it. And we talked about how the parent and the principal needs to focus on their individual child, and that is breaking the law to involve other students when it doesn't pertain to them. The teacher personally believes that the full and total inclusion of all students, it fits the vision and mission of the school, which it does, but you also need to address all students' needs in your classroom. You can't just focus on one, and you need to do what's best for all students to provide them a sound, equitable education. Humberto, the principal, talked to the parents and rest assured that he will investigate the situation and speak with the teacher personally to determine the area of need and what to do next. And the technician, is the technician a specialist?
See, that's your instructional, excuse me, IF, that's your instructional facilitator.
Okay, so the 27-year-old with 2 years of experience, instructional facilitator, who was previously a professor, is working with the principal to determine the next action steps, which I kind of have an issue with.
Well, of
but
course, you shouldn't be sending somebody else. Principal,
Yeah.
you need to go yourself. She told the
Yes.
she told the parent representative that she would go, and then she turned to her instructional facilitator and sent him.
And he has 2 years of experience and was at the
Exactly.
collegiate level, which you don't have background
Doesn't
of what.
translate at all.
So that's kind of what I had an issue with.
But
But gathering the facts from the teacher perspective with her multiple years of experience, decided to relocate. She really wanted to focus on the needs of the students who were EC and had a disability or were disadvantaged, which is great, but you just can't primarily use your advanced learners to teach the other children to learn. That goes against the practice of gifted education and best practice in curriculum at all.
absolutely, because you're just doing remedial work with those other kids. It's
Mhm.
probably 2 or 3 levels below what they should be doing.
Mhm. And they should honestly be exposed to like those depth and complexity units, those
Exactly.
ladders and best practices that benefits all kids.
Yeah, I mean, we need to be scaffolding them as well. That's what you're talking about. Absolutely.
And that's kind of where the
Warehousing.
MTSS model comes in too, where you got to meet the needs of all of our students, learners, no matter where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So Sylvia had a kind of narrow-minded approach per se, where she said the very best way for our top students to prove what they are learning is by teaching others, which is totally not true. I mean,
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
collaborate, but there has to be more. And everyone knows that in order to truly understand a topic, the best thing that you can do is teach it to someone else, which is completely false. Which I have issues with that. So from the facts from the case study from the other teacher's perspective, Sergio, who is the facilitator, spoke with the other teachers. Sergio, the classroom teacher, I mean, really had a better approach to instructional, I guess, instructional design in his classroom. He thought that the students should demonstrate solid performance, but we also want to see them build upon the lessons that we have given them so that we can give them that scaffolded approach.
Yeah.
Internal and external measurements. can be used, but also you have to have teacher capacity and teacher insight and observations to determine what's best for your students. So he showed more growth than 4A due to the fact that he used small group instruction, and he actually did not use his higher learners to teach his students who are struggling. This shouldn't be a regular classroom responsibility. That's why we have specialists, which that's kind of an issue too, because the specialist should build the capacity of the teacher so that the teachers can make more of an impact to the students that they serve, due to the fact that if you build teachers' understanding of instructional design and strategies, it helps better the school. So Angelica, the other teacher, spoke about, we want all of our students to progress within their own capabilities, and the families need to respect what we do. We work with the entire class, and they offer activities for the kids that are advancing more slowly, which is great, but there has to be a collaborative partnership between the school and school community, along with the parents, so that there's buy-in to what we do as a school. So, sorry. All right.
All right, and then how might the principal approach this and future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over another? So some of the key things that we hit on: school-wide communication on the approach to instructional practices to ensure all students' needs are met and challenged with that basic sound education. There should have meetings with specific teachers based on their data and discuss what best practices should be used in the classroom. So it kind of reminds me of what Dr. Lamb was just saying, having those one-on-ones. It's okay to, you've got your broad information, but we've got to specifically, deal with those individual teachers as well.
Yes.
Create a school-wide instructional framework with input from the stakeholders on what math and ELA should look like within our school. I think as we read through there were different approaches by the different teachers and different grade levels. So there needs to be, I guess, a little bit more uniformity as far as, what's the expectations of the administrator, what do you expect to see in your school? Encourage collaboration and teamwork among teachers, fostering an environment where they can learn from each other's experiences and perspectives. Because I think Sylvia, she had some interesting perspective having the years, but she was just not still quite seeing other people's ideas. So we need that more collaboration there. Support teachers in implementing inclusive strategies that benefit all students, regardless of their individual needs or abilities. She should also consider involving parents in the dialogue about inclusive education. They should encourage collaboration and teamwork among the teachers, fostering an environment where they can learn from each other, and the instructional coaching cycles to work with individual teachers. So again, that one-on-one piece for their instructional practices. Go ahead, Jeffrey. You can change the slide. All right, what is the path that Eugenia should take? So Eugenia should have a conversation about professionalism, and that the core practice is to ensure that all of the students' needs are being met. There were definitely some times where people were not, Eugenia, other teachers, there was a lack of professionalism in how they were communicating with one another. Be sure to have a conversation that they should only be focused on their child, not to compare them to other students. So not that the parents' complaint or concern wasn't valid, it was, but the time they went to, compare to another class, then that's where, they crossed the line. Have a discussion with district level specialists on providing professional development and walkthroughs to identify areas of improvement or growth and development. And again, just like the skip, develop that action plan to address the instructional needs for all the students, include short and long-term goals, align them with the Every Student Succeed Act, so that the needs are being met, facilitate that alignment within the school on standard understandings and strategies. So again, the professional learning, collaborate, problem solving as well, evaluate and reflect. By taking this path, Eugenia can effectively address concerns about inclusive education in the school and work towards creating a supportive and inclusive learning environment where all students can thrive. And the question of, is one point of view more correct than the other, and why? And so when we were talking about this, I said, well, no one's hands are clean in this situation. It's not like, oh, there was one group or someone was right and someone was wrong. Everybody's hand is dirty on this one. Parents, again, have valid concerns, but their concerns should be focused on their specific child and no one else's FERPA, okay, that privacy. The teachers' instructional approaches and practices should be improved to ensure all students in the classes are met and addressed, especially when, specifically thinking about Sylvia there. Administration and instructional leaders should work with the teacher in this area and should approach them to improve her instructional capacity, to help empower her. And that's the thing. Sylvia, she's got the years, she's got the experience, but she needs some help in, differentiation and other methods. And so she needs a little bit more help and support there to be empowered to try other ways of teaching and meeting the needs of her students. The administration, school culture, and professional conversation and demeanor should be improved due to the fact that the teacher stormed out the principal's office. Even when the parents came to approach, not that you can't call someone on a first name basis, but I just kind of, I felt sort of a way when they just came, well, Eugenia, you should do da. Even just reading it, it just had a certain tone to it. So again, that we've got to get on the lines of professionalism, modeling that. Eugenia maybe needs to, I guess, put her foot down a little bit more and say, look, we're going to speak to one another respectfully, and this is how we should address one another. Again, treating all educators and stakeholders with the same standards. Parent-teacher association should not be confrontational to the principal to ensure clear boundaries are set. Again, keeping it professional. Reference state statutes and federal laws on confidentiality of educational records and student privacy and rights. Again, I can only talk to you about your child. I cannot, without breaking the law, speak to you on other people's children. And lastly, we feel like the way that the PTO folks were going, if they didn't really like what Eugenia had to say, they were probably going to head to the superintendent next. So we were like, well, let's head her off at the pass and invite the superintendent in. Just go ahead and do it and say, okay, well, let's open up the dialogue about these issues. So don't even wait for them to go and climb that ladder to the next step to make another complaint. We're going to do it for you. Let's invite the superintendent in and let's see if we can get a good dialogue going.
All right. What kind of collaboration from the children's family might the principal and teachers propose in order to improve the inclusive education program, encourage an appreciation for diversity, and stimulate learning for all the students at the school? We said student-led parent conferences at least every 9 weeks, students showing a portfolio of classwork where there's not necessarily the better work, it's just what everyone's capable of doing. Family curriculum partnership nights to build school and community relationship, having showcases of technology or STEAM projects on all levels, not waiting until IEP reevals when adjustments need to be made sooner for the students' need, a roundtable conversation with all stakeholders on inclusion practices and instruction within the school, and have student showcase night where students can showcase their learning from the current school year. And then as an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what might Ismail, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create some harmony out of the differences in opinion among teachers? Be student-centered when having conversations with teachers that he works with. Provide research-based insight to support teachers. Ishmael needs to work hand in hand with the administrators of the building before trying to resolve conflicting opinions. Strengthening PLCs, make sure they are data-driven, and work with the teachers on differentiation for all learners, below grade level, on grade level, and advanced learners, while exposing all students, to a grade level core curriculum.
So can I add something in here? So I think that's the principal's job. I mean, I don't think the instructional specialist should have to resolve any conflicts among teachers. I think it should be the responsibility of the administrator.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't have standing in personnel issues. That's actually a violation of personnel law in North Carolina. I know it is in South Carolina as well. You can't delegate that to somebody else. The principal has to deal with personnel issues. That's in the law. So that's a good point. You don't send the instructional facilitator when teachers are having conflicts. You don't send them when you don't know what's going on in the room. That's what they pay you for. And which kind of concludes with me is the power of walkthroughs. If you just walk by the door of a room and you see a group of kids around a table and you see high, middle, and low kids in the room, don't assume that that's cooperative learning. That's a mistake. I use that as just one example. But if you go in that room and spend any time, pretty soon you would realize, wait a minute, that's not cooperative learning. You know, the upper kids are skilling and drilling the lower kids on remedial level work. You know, that's probably good for the low kids. I'm not sure it's really good for the low kids because we need to do more than rote and recall with them. And we know it's bad for the upper kids. And so you got to get in those rooms and not just walk around the room and see what's on the wall. You've got to be paying attention to that differentiated instruction. How are we grouping and regrouping? How are we doing flexible groups? How are we doing cooperative learning? How are we differentiating the levels of the lesson? You got to be in there knowing those kinds of things. And when it's not happening and teachers get into a conflict because we can't send somebody else to do that. That's what we paid you to do. That'd be you, Miss Perkins. I told you the story of Miss Perkins, the old kindergarten teacher I inherited. And I can say she's old because I'm her age now. 35 years ago, I inherited a 65-year-old kindergarten teacher. I was in my office up at the end of the elementary wing one day, and all of a sudden the lights started shaking and flickering, and I come running out of the building, and there's a little playground there, and her kindergarten kids were climbing up on the side of the wall using the electrical cables. And she looked at me and said, somebody needs to get control of these kids. And I said, it would be you, Miss Perkins. That's what we paid you to do. What do you mean somebody needs to do this? That would be your job, to supervise these children. So, Miss Perkins, if you got teachers that are in conflict, that would be you. You, as the principal, have to do that. You can't send somebody else. You've got to be the one that does that. And again, to be redundant, because it looks like what you think it ought to look like doesn't mean it actually is. You got to go in the room and be there enough to know what's going on.
So leads us to, what actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experiences they have observed among the children? Well, the teacher definitely needs to acknowledge the parents' concerns to establish trust with her parents and families. And one thing as a principal, I believe I would have done is just remind the teacher too that behavior is always a form of communication. So once that communication piece is there with the parents to provide some clarity to them, that it might not necessarily be these parents are just coming in and automatically angry. You know, there's reasons for their beliefs. So making sure that the teacher does acknowledge the parents' concerns, and then sharing her teaching practices that is currently in place, and also invite
the parents to come in and volunteer. That way they could see what's really happening. But before that, obviously there needs to be some a learning curve there and some professional development. And then she has to change her instructional approaches prior to parents coming in. And then communicate with the families. Again, communication, you'll see one thing I've noticed throughout this class too, is just how, and you've always known this, but especially like from a administrator's perspective, how important communication is with all stakeholders involved, and the way you present that communication to them. And so just making sure that families are aware with newsletters and emails about the classroom instruction and events that are taking place. And then also work with that teacher to, again, like we've already said, model, teach them how to collect data that tracks student achievement throughout the months, and have instructional coaches also work with the teacher to meet with the teacher. And one thing our group talked about as well is the importance of tracking all students' growth. So not just tracking the EC students' growth, but you want to see, even with your higher students, you want to see some growth.
Yes.
And I've actually got to experience a similar situation to this firsthand, because this is the first year our school has pushed inclusion with all of the EC students, but they also, I don't agree with how the administration did the master schedule, because again, they put all the EC children in one class as well as with the MTSS students. So now it's basically a special education classroom. But the inclusion facilitator for our district, at a faculty meeting, she showed data for just the EC kids, though, based on the district I-Ready assessments, to show, hey, I just want you guys to see it's working. I know it's been a challenge, but look at the fall scores of the students with IEPs, and then look at the winter scores on I-Ready assessments with the students with IEPs, which for that one section, it looks great. But I was interested, I was wanting to know, well, what does it look like for those general education students as well? Because, so I think that that was one point that we talked about strongly, is just tracking the student growth for all students. There needs to be some type of portfolio or data notebook, data logs for every student, not just students who you legally have to have progress monitoring probes for. And then finally, the 4 ethical paradigms. So for under care, yes, teacher must serve all students. Like we said, principals should address the concerns of the parents, and walkthroughs. We talked about how, like you said, Dr. Lamb, walkthroughs are going to be a big one, because that's really going to show you what is happening. And with walkthroughs, one thing that I got to see through our internship hours too, when my principal did allow me to do some walkthroughs, is it is interesting the difference between when you tell a teacher a scheduled time that you're coming in versus a walkthrough. You can really, I mean, I've always kind of heard that, and common sense kind of tells you that. But I mean, I guess I'm so schedule oriented in my classroom, because I have to be too, is that you can't really get all, I don't know. I feel like I have to get it all in. So that was kind of interesting to me to see. So just those walkthroughs, that was pretty eye-opening. And then always through the critique, making sure you see the viewpoints of all stakeholders involved. And then as far as justice, the principal must follow the law, reiterating that to the parents, so you're not breaking FERPA, and only discussing with the parent the concern of their child, and just reiterating you're not here to talk about any other students.
Yes. Excellent. Kristen said something there at the end that I think is the key to teaching, and that is creating a sense of urgency that what we're doing is important. I think teachers miss out on that. You see that, and to her point, when there's a scheduled observation, you kind of see that in teachers' classrooms. But when it's not scheduled, you don't see that sense of urgency in the room. You should see that every day. If this is important, we need to get this so that we can get to the next thing, because this is important. It's real. We need this, you know, that creating that sense of urgency. And Kristen's exactly right. When you go into a teacher, if they're not used to seeing you and you walk into a teacher's classroom and it's not a scheduled observation, it's like it's night and day in terms of what's going on in that room. You can just feel it when you walk in. That there's no sense of this is important, no sense of urgency. It's kind of a catch as catch can attitude. We'll get it if we can. If we don't, we won't. That's what you've got to fight, is complacency, that it looks like school, but it's not really school. It just looks the part. Just because it looks the part doesn't mean it is the part. Going back to, you know, if you saw me and my wife walk into that little dance studio because there wasn't nothing else to do in that small town, she looked the part, I didn't, but she wasn't the part. Love her to death, better than my next breath, but she can't dance a lick, never could. Lessons didn't help. But now, if you just looked at her, you thought, boy, I bet she's a great dancer. I mean, just because you look the part doesn't mean, because the kids and the teacher are in the room, doesn't mean that engagement and learning is happening. You've got to go in and see that that's happening. You can't assume that it is. And I'm telling you, if you don't go to rooms very often, they just don't seem to have a sense of urgency. That's the big thing that I pick up on the difference that Kristen's talking about. She's absolutely correct. All right, our next group.
All right, case study number 4. So largest takeaways of the case study, as you know, has been said, Sylvia is a 3rd grade teacher who has special needs students within her classroom. She has her students work and collaborate with the special needs children. The parents of the students expressed concerns to Sylvia, about Sylvia to the principal. They feel that the children are not progressing like the other 3rd grade classroom. She's putting more focus on the special needs students. The principal, Eugenia, brought in the tech coordinator, Ishmael, to look at the situation in other classrooms. And she met with Sylvia, and really Sylvia did not respond well to the meeting, got up and walked out. Ishmael Ortiz brings the idea that the special needs students should be overseen by the integration specialist outside the classroom to get them on grade level. This was kind of not received well, especially from the 2nd grade teachers. And then Eugenia scheduled a meeting to clear the air with all the teachers. All right, next slide. So just some outside perspectives, you know, just some things that went through my head and some of my other, you know, people that we talked to. Does the principal know her teachers well? You know, during that meeting, and, you know, it wasn't that long until the teacher kind of became defensive, and got up and left. And, you know, I got the vibe that maybe, you know, she doesn't know her teachers as well as they should to know how to approach the situation, in terms of the conversation being held and things like that. Kind of like we just talked about, is she stepping foot in the classrooms enough? Because if, you know, if this is a concern, then it sounds like it should be something that would have been seen on a daily basis. And the last thing is a community alert. One thing that I was curious about when reading this was, you know, how did those parents know about the other classroom and the aspect of, you know, I get what's going on in their students, but one thing I've learned throughout my internship is, you know, the moment something in a negative connotation or that gets outside into the community, well, that's when, you know, situations can arise. And that's when, as Dr. Lamb says, you might get a phone call from the news nowadays. And so the aspect of they knowing that their kids are not doing or growing as much as the other 3rd grade class, there must be some talk going on outside, maybe at the sporting events or whatever. That's something that as a principal, I would be aware of and be like, okay, how can I keep what's happening in my classrooms kind of as much as I can inside my building? So that was something to think about as well. And so, you know, just going into this with the North Carolina Basic Education, the General Assembly believes that all children can learn. high expectations, each child to learn, to achieve, fulfill his or her potential. And then moving on through the basic education content, a core curriculum for all students that takes into account the special needs of the children. I'm one that, I think about they need, and me and my group talked about, special needs or not, they need to receive grade level content as well as, the resources to help bridge their education. But that's just something to keep in mind moving forward with our roles as admin.
How might the principal approach this in future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? The principal should have had the meeting with the parent representatives. She should make sure that she reiterate that legally she could not discuss any particular students. She should complete instructional walkthroughs with the leadership team, the principal, the assistant principal, the curriculum facilitator, the instructional coach, all of them, because those are the people that will be helping to go in and assist the teachers if they need help. By having walkthroughs, there will be data to dive into with conversations with all of the teachers, especially Sylvia, all the teachers that are impacted by the inclusion. There should be a clear understanding of what inclusion should look like across the board. It should not be one way in my class and a different way in your class. It should be even across the board. Eugenia should sit down with the teacher and discuss the concerns that were brought up. During the discussion, the teacher should have been able to explain and articulate her thoughts. They should have had a PLC meeting, grade level PLCs, to discuss the walkthrough data. The walkthrough team should have expressed their concerns. They should have gave them the expectations when it came to what they saw when they walked in the rooms. They should be modeling for them what they should see. Teachers should have a great understanding of what inclusion is. Teachers should be trained on inclusion and the gradual release of responsibility. So when you walk in the classroom, it should be, your hook, your, I do, we do, you do, your review, your closure. So everyone had the opportunity to work together. And the stronger students were not, in a sense, doing her job. She should provide continuous support for teachers so that they can reach all students and not just focus on one select group of students. She should ensure that everyone is on the same page and all grade levels should be doing the same thing. And as a school leadership team, they need to be discussing best practices and making sure that they're following the school improvement goals and that it adds another step for their action plan.
So what is the path that Eugenia should take? There are several different things that she should do. Conduct some in-depth training, first of all on FERPA, because that was the first thing that she did wrong. She discussed other students with parents that were not the students' parents. She violated IDEA. She should also, the teacher violated IDEA. She should also have some training on MTSS and differentiated learning, so that she can meet the needs of all the students in the classroom, bringing the lower ones up and keep challenging the higher level kids. She should also allow special education teachers to conduct workshops that assist regular classroom teachers in understanding how to deal with EC kids and how to teach them effectively, while maintaining the integrity of the instruction for all of the students. Also some PLCs that share some instructional strategies. Teachers are great at doing that. And if you have one that's really good, that can share with everybody, kind of at first not kind of pointing her out to begin with in the group, even though they all kind of had opinions about her methods, but it seems that she really wanted to help the kids. It's the reason she went to a place that had, disadvantaged kids. So it needs to be a support system. Meet with the parents and explain. I think some parents don't understand what inclusion means. So explain, general workshop or a meeting with them just to understand how it all works for everyone, again, making it very general. She does need to do walkthrough observations. She doesn't need to take what one person says over another. She needs to see it for herself. She needs to go in and interact with Sylvia and with the kids and watch what's going on in the classroom multiple times. And then she does need to sit down with Sylvia and do some sort of develop a plan to improve her class instruction and to teach her some new strategies and ways that can be constructive for her, that bolsters her self-confidence. I have personal experience with a colleague who had some one-on-one with the principal, and rather than assisting him, it just completely annihilated his self-confidence and his self-worth as a teacher. So that has to be done very constructively, I think, but it does need to be done so that she can effectively teach these kids and get all of them on the same page. Go ahead. Is one point of view more correct than the other, and why? Well, essentially, point of view doesn't matter. What matters is upholding the law, and you have to follow the law to the letter. All students are entitled to a free, appropriate public education, and as such, they should all be taught at the same level, and also, provide strategies that bridge that gap between the EC kids and the higher level kids. IEPs must be followed to the letter. FERPA must also be adhered to, and both of those were kind of violated in this situation. So no, one point of view is not more creative. It's not a point of view. It's following the law is what matters.
Continue. Exactly. All right. Is that it?
That's for me.
All righty.
All right, so moving on to the type of collaboration from the children's families that the principal and the teachers can propose in order to improve the program and encourage appreciation throughout the school. Some ideas that our group had was that first it should be focused around increasing all parents' knowledge of the inclusion program. Let's not forget the parents of the EC children that are in that classroom. Let's include them, expand perspectives, celebrate diversity, and increase community involvement. The principals and other teachers could plan a lunch and learn event. I know that's something that we incorporated at our school. They incorporate lunch, and it gives a little incentive for the parents to come to the event, and then they provide the information there where they could be informed about the inclusive education program, how the school is working to help meet the needs of the students according to the federal legal compliance. And an additional specific activity that they could propose in order to help improve the program is to plan grade level educational programs where students could research a topic, prepare a presentation, and be ready to present those to families that come to the program. And that allows each student's strength to be celebrated within that classroom. So what that would look like, these students in the classrooms would prepare these projects and presentations, and then the parents would come into the schools, and each student's group would get to present that information, and that would allow the parents not only to see their child's progress, but also appreciate the contributions of everyone else. So moving on to the area with Ismail and how he can integrate and create some harmony regarding the differences in opinions amongst the teachers. First, to ensure teachers feel that their opinions valued and help build efficacy amongst our teachers, which we outlined in our APTEL portfolio, looking at efficacy and making sure that these teachers feel confident in incorporating the inclusion model in their classrooms. Ismail could also assist with issuing a digital teacher survey similar to our survey that we issue to teachers at our school to gain insight regarding their input, which could be used to suggest any potential changes to the school administration team working alongside them. I know that they said in the case study that he had conversations with teachers, but I think having that the digital copy of that data showing those opinions is able to be helpful in showing progress. He could also facilitate peer observations amongst teachers and allow teachers to go into peers' classrooms and see how they approach the inclusion model and gain ideas that they could implement in their own classrooms. They can assist, Ismail could assist in coordinating professional development opportunities for teachers about the inclusion model, and should also assist the administration team with completing regular walkthrough observations, which our group has mentioned previously, in order to observe strengths and areas of growth from all teachers. And then Ismail could collaborate with the school administration team to assist in creating or modifying the school improvement plan, which would outline specific inclusion strategies that would be implemented school-wide in accordance with the law, allowing the teachers to work towards a common goal. In this case study, you have teachers on different grade levels working towards different goals. I feel like they need to work together to accomplish common goals within the school.
What actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experiences they have observed among the children? First, she needs to ensure that there is an open line of communication between her and her parents. This could include class dojo, remind, phone calls. It can even be classroom newsletters so that parents can stay abreast of what is going on inside of the classroom. Once Sylvia has a clear understanding of what the expectations are going to be, she should have a class curriculum night so that parents can have an understanding of what's going on. She must keep in mind that all students must be exposed to grade level content. Sylvia needs to be sure that all students are receiving some type of one-on-one with her if that's the expectation. She can split her time if her schedule permits and allows her to have a sort time. She can split it up so that she meets with 2 or 3 different groups of students. And that way everyone receives teacher time. And she could also invite her parents to come be volunteers or just come observe the class.
In consideration of the paradigm, the principal didn't really show any ethic of all being, that she didn't show, or really know what was going on in the classroom. I think as an administrator, it's very important to actually know what's going on in the school. Even speaking with the parent representative, I feel that, as a parent, I would feel some type of way. And that brings me to my next slide, in perspective of the parents, I would want my child to actually receive, the right services. And, I would be outraged or, unpleased at the fact that the principal didn't do her due diligence in this particular matter. But as far as training the staff and, actually resolving conflict with the parent, I think would be the admin's best decision in this particular case. I don't know what's going on with that. Oh, that was it.
Okay. Here's a takeaway from Randy's first slide. And Glenda elaborated on it. Unfortunately, the 2 most common types of conversations that principals have with teachers concerning instruction go one of 2 ways. As Randy pointed out, and as Glenda gave an example of, the first type is the only time the principal ever talks to a teacher about instruction is to give them a whipping. They get defensive, they run out of the room. That tells you that the only time the principal ever talks to them about, and they might say, well, how about that ball game Monday night? UConn won again. But when they're talking about business, when they're talking about instruction, which is the core of what we do, the only time they ever talk to them is to complain or to whip them over something. That's you need to be having a broad range of instructional conversations, not just when you don't like something that's going on because a parent has complained. That knee-jerk reaction. Parent complains, you know, man gets yelled at work, he comes home and yells at his wife yells at the kid's got nobody to yell at, so he kicks the dog. When and the teacher is the dog in the scenario, the parent comes and yells at the assistant principal or the facilitator, then goes and yells at the principal then turns around and kicks the teacher. You can't do that. You've got to engage your faculty in instructional conversations, not just when something's going bad. And that's about half of it. The other half is the sandwich method. And this is the one I hate the most. The sandwich method is I'm not happy with Brandon's teaching. I bring him in. He's not doing something, that I agree with in his classroom or something that he needs to be better at. And when he comes in, I'm effusive in my praise of the things that he does well. And I sit and list 5 things, 8 things, 10 things that he does well. And then kind of, I slip one bad thing in, then I tell him 10 more things that he did well. So when he leaves the office that day, I've mentioned 20 things that he's done well, and I've only mentioned one thing that he's not done well. But that's the one that I really wanted him to focus on. But because I have sandwiched it in between all this good stuff, did he even hear that one bad thing? Well, of course not. We simply cannot have those one-on-one conversations and coaching sessions. People just avoid those like the plague. And even when they have them, they hide the content of the message. They bury the lead, as we'd say in the newspaper business. If I'm not happy how he's running his cooperative learning groups, I need to bring him in and we need to talk about that, but not in but I also can talk to him when he's doing something good. But we either thrash them when a parent complains, or we hide what we really need for them to work on in the sandwich method. And so even when we have these meetings, even when we have the one-on-one, they're not done properly. That I see is our biggest barrier to quality instruction in school today, is we don't set clear expectations and communicate those professionally. And we don't praise people when they do well. We only either yell at them when something didn't go well, or we're afraid to tell them, you're not really good at this. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. We're going to work with you. We're going to help you to get better at this one thing, rather than, just kind of slipping it in a stack of good things. Because that's not what teachers will pick up on. All right, next group, here we go.
All right. All right, so we're team 3. We have Thomas and Megan and myself. All right, just a brief overview, which we all have heard throughout the night. We talked about located in a small town, a semi-rural village in Chile. The local public schools serve 300 students, 60% from disadvantaged families. Parents expressed concern about their children's progress, feeling that the needs of students without learning difficulties were being neglected due to the focus on special needs kids. Sylvia defended her approach, emphasizing inclusion education and peer collaboration, which she believed benefit all students. Other teachers had varying perspectives, with some emphasis and importance of curriculum coverage, and others advocating for inclusive practices. Eugenia decided to hold a meeting with teachers to address the tension surrounding the approaches to special needs education.
So as we talked about it, the inclusion method, just to give like a little definition of it, it's basically the general education teacher working together with the SPED teacher in a regular classroom setting. I mean, that's basically IDA, LRE, least restrictive environment, kind of mandates that, that students with disabilities are taught with their peers. We throw in there the seclusion part, because a lot of times I know a couple times at my school, there's times where certain teachers want their kid to be pulled all the time and not get the general instruction. Well, that's basically seclusion. You can't be doing that. You can't be pulling kids like that. That is, we're actually going through a situation like that in our school now where teachers, parents come out this for compensatory services because we pulled a kid out of class and he missed instruction, direct instruction. So I've got to be careful about that when we're talking about working with just a specialist or a classroom teacher or a sped teacher being pulled out of the thing. You're actually secluding that kid from his education. A lot of people think, no, he's just getting that instruction from the specialist like that. But if he's missing direct instruction within that thing, especially if the kid has services on his IEP, you're in the setting is in the JED setting, not a sped setting. You will have the answer for that. Next slide, please. So we talked about the questions. What might the principal approach to this and with future meetings? I mean, you can acknowledge the parents that you hear their concerns. But as we said, everybody said it tonight, it's not about your personal feelings, it's following the law. The law is going to dictate what you need to do in that classroom. Teachers need to understand the laws that mandate exceptional children. A lot of times teachers just don't know. They'll know, you need to let them know. As being a principal, you know, we are leaders of teachers, champion students, leaders of teachers. We lead the teachers, and part of that is teaching our teachers the laws that mandates is, because you'd be surprised some teachers do not know the laws that govern EC and what's mandated by sped teachers, by them, and federal laws that mandates that. Educators must also grasp the art of instructing diverse skill levels concurrently within the classroom. I was telling my team, we talked about it. We're actually going to that right now. We have an influx of what we call MELS students in Wake County. We call them ML now, multilingual students. And with that being said, we had to learn, we had somebody come in and taught us how to use Google Translate within the classroom while we're instructing, that we can talk to all levels of our kids. So basically, as you're speaking, it translates it on our board, what we're saying. So our ML students can follow along without being left behind, and instructing them as well, so they wouldn't fall behind in the lessons, which I thought was pretty cool that this case study came up as we're just now learning that at my school. The second question is, what is the path she should take? Again, ensuring equitable opportunities for students with disabilities. You're talking about FAPE. And that's also the reg ed kids in that classroom. They have free and appropriate education. They're entitled to that as well. So you gotta juggle that line on that fence. You got the EC side of the house, you got the gen ed side of the house, and you got to play both sides, because everybody is due that. Like Dr. Lambie said earlier, there's a law from anybody in your building that they fall under, and you must abide by those. Be more involved in the school. Be aware of what's going on, observations, number of students, class schedules. And when we do observations, I know my school observations, you get multiple observations from multiple different administrators, because you get multiple point of views, not just one teacher or one admin doing the walkthrough. You get multiple, so you get multiple approaches, multiple opportunities to grow as a teacher, and then provide training on instructional models that will reach all learners.
All right, question 3 was, is one viewpoint more correct than the other? We've talked about it tonight. The law is the law, so it doesn't really matter whose viewpoints you're looking at. Also, Eugenia could explore methods for helping teachers in implementing differentiated instruction through data-driven approaches, and offering different tactics to cater to the diverse student populations. Question 4 was, what collaboration with the families might the principal propose? We talked about some family inclusion nights to ensure that everyone understands the law, also make everyone aware of the diversity and appreciate it. Again, like having the students present something or share what they're doing in class is helping everyone appreciate all levels of learners, and build that communication to keep parents aware of the laws. What approach might Ishmael take? We talked about offering professional development to train the teachers on how to educate the groups of students, and offer strategies to help them plan differentiated lessons that meet the needs. And he could have some observations of the teachers' classrooms along with the principal and offer support as a coach. And what actions might Sylvia take with the families? Again, that open line of communication. So supporting the EC families by ensuring that they know the laws that support their students, the middle group of students by ensuring that their child gets a basic education and provides on grade level content, and the AIG families by offering differentiated curriculum to meet the needs of those learners.
All right, in our group, we just focus on this particular ethical paradigm profession, develop a structure for inclusion classrooms and offer professional development sessions on its implementation and appearance, and to establish accessible communication to ensure that all stakeholders understand the federal laws. And just in a quick summary, it's important to know what is happening in the school building. Being familiar with the federal laws and their implementation is paramount, and that all students deserve the right to be to a basic education, and of course, be a champion for the students. And that concludes our presentation.
Excellent. That you continue to bring out in this one. You got to make sure your teachers know the law. Every child in that building's got a law behind them. Every parent has standing. It's either FATE, LRE, Basic Ed, AIG. Every child in that building has a legal right to their education. You can't sacrifice, and teachers don't know what those laws are, and they think they can skirt them, or that don't blame the teachers. Don't hate the player, hate the game. They don't know the game. You got to train them. You have got to train them. If they don't know, then they need to know. They need to know what you know. All right, we got one more group left.
Yes, we do. And I would like to thank everybody for hanging out. We were supposed to do it yesterday, but some of our schedules were mixed up, so we're doing it
We're
today.
glad to have you tonight.
Yes. Let me see. I always have trouble these crazy things. Can you see it?
Not yet.
What am I doing? I'm doing something wrong. Okay, share.
There we go.
That might work, huh? Okay. Here we go. So again, thank you. This is our inclusion case study 4. I'm Adrienne Stokes King, and we have Brandon Reeves and Larry Richardson. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Brandon Reeves.
All right, I'm gonna do the brief summary. Is it blown up?
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
All right, I'll try to make it quick because a lot of information has kind of already been covered. But it's the pre-K elementary school has about 300 students, 35 staff members. Third grade parents are concerned with one class in particular because the teacher spends too much time with the children with special needs and not enough time with the high ability students. Parents want to see their high ability children improve academically and no longer serve as tutors for students with special needs. The principal approached the teacher regarding these allegations. City believes that students teaching each other is a best practice. They're getting different opinions. The teacher stands behind her decision to utilize inclusion and student support in her classroom to grow the learning of her students. The principal met with her technical coordinator and the classroom teacher in question. The teacher in question should refrain from using other students to teach inclusion, as other teachers agree the school has adequate special needs specialists to assist the students in need. I agree with everybody was saying. The principal should have handled it herself instead of going to the technical coordinator or trying to push it off on someone else. But that's the brief summary.
Okay. So I have the first question. How might the principal approach this in future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? I'm going by like my special ed specialty and how I know how things run in school, how things run inside the school. So I think first they should discuss with the teachers the significance of inclusion with all the teachers and how it should be implemented in the class. Because sometimes we think that people know these things and they really don't. So we need to make sure we have those discussions with all our teachers. And we need to provide the teachers with appropriate inclusion training, realizing that all students are entitled to equal access for basic education, not just our special education, our SPED students. You guys call them EC there, but the EC students. And we need to meet with all teachers to discuss the problems and have them offer their opinions and their perspectives for certain concerns. And that we should speak with also with our parent representatives to listen to the issues raised by the parents, and making sure that we let them know that although we are happy to discuss their child, that we definitely cannot discuss other people's children in the classrooms, that we can just discuss from their perspective and their child. What paths? This is kind of that Eugenia should take. Coming from, like I said, a special education teacher, I think that we should make sure, I think a lot of times, and I've done this myself, sometimes we throw around these words like FAPE, IDEA, LRC, LRE, and things like that. And some people may not even know that. I know that if you're a general education teacher, a lot of times you don't even really know the differences in these different things for the special education children. So I think we should really make sure that all teachers understand what the fair, appropriate public education means, and that it is the rights for students with disabilities. Also saying that all children have those basic educational rights also. And learning exactly what IDEA means, that is the Individual with Disabilities Educational Act. And this was to ensure that all students with disabilities, and that it's a federal law, and all children with disabilities are entitled to a fair, appropriate public education, which is part of FAPE, but that is also a part of IDEA, which prioritize special education students related to their services as far as their unique needs and their IEPs and things of that nature, to make sure that they have the education and they're ready for employment and things like that after they're out. Least restrictive environment. I know a lot of people get confused with this because they think that it's an actual place, and it's not. It's basically what they say is a guiding philosophy that states that children with individual education plans should educate alongside disabled peers to the greatest extent that they can. So it's not just having them in a certain classroom or a certain place, but just to have them inside those classes with their non-disabled peers so that they can learn alongside them, and ensuring that all students with IEPs are distributed evenly to all teachers and not just a select handful of teachers. Again, going back to that master schedule, making sure that you place these kids first, and then everybody else, and so we can make sure that we distribute the special education children throughout the teachers and not just get them bunched up into one class. And it's imperative that leadership knows what is going on in the classroom. So walkthroughs are a must to ensure that you are aware of all the issues that's going on in the classroom. Because if you don't know, then of course you're going to be passing the buck and relying on other people to do the job that you're supposed to be doing.
All right, I had this slide. Is one point of view more correct than the other, and why? We said no, because the general and special education population, both of them have rights. And I said, both parties have the opportunity to equal educational rights. Principals, she can be open to hear everyone's opinion, but the principal should be more aware of what's going on in the classroom. She had to first, well, we discussed that. She had to first take the issue to the technical coordinator, and then the FERPA law. It's the federal law that protects the privacy of student education records. The law applies to all schools that receive funds under an applicable program of the U.S. Department of Education. And then what kind of collaboration from the children's families might the principal and the teachers propose in order to improve the inclusive education program, encourage and appreciate for diversity and stimulate learning for all the students at the school, organize a workshop, focus on inclusion and the benefits of its implementation, pretty much like inform the parents, let everybody know what is inclusion, how can, give them knowledge, curriculum nights, open house, test prep, have parent conferences, discuss how the students' needs are met. You get the parents and the parent advisory board involved in reviewing the research. And if you have a good member who you can let them be a voice, increase communication with parents using the school website, newsletters, whatever source that you use to communicate with parents. And of course, attend IEP meetings.
As an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what might Ishmael, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create some harmony out of the difference in opinion among teachers? We said that he should first create a PLC to analyze the instructional data of the classes or the classes and any subgroups within the school to determine what's the greatest need instructionally. And how to address that. They can research the best practices and strategies to address the greatest needs. And then the PLC can then look into what teacher leadership and empowerment looks like at their school and what are the strengths at their schools and where teachers need help being empowered and moving into leadership. Then they have to assess organizational management of the school. And from there, the PLC would need to look at the master schedule of the school to see if it was created off of federal programs first. So did you look at it and place your EC students first, or did you look and start working with PE and music first, and then everybody ended up in the same classroom? From there, students, if you set your master schedule that way, you automatically are making sure that EC students receive that fair and free education, and the rest of the students are receiving that basic education. And what actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question? We said that first she could invite the principal into her classroom to observe her teaching, because obviously observations is not taking place. Then she could also have someone do a peer observation so she can get another perspective. And with the family, she could have parent-teacher conferences, and then also meet with Eugenia on a one-to-one basis so they could be on the same page and explain what accommodations each student in her classroom has and how she can address it and how Eugenia can feel she can address it.
That's it. I will stop the share.
All right. I want to reiterate one of the points that Larry made there again in the end. Remember, your master schedule is a product of the master scheduling process. If you don't make your federal programs the priority in scheduling, like Larry said, you may end up with all your EC kids in the same class because you schedule by music and they all need to be in that. And but you need to make sure that you understand when we ask you to look at your master schedule in your building, we ask you to look at the process. And that's again, that's kind of hard of the master schedule is you got to have a process. All right. Appreciate everybody participating tonight. What's the score? What if you were rating this principal on a scale of 1 to 10? I'll make it easier for you. Scale of 1 to 10. What rating would you give this principal? A 1. Randy says a 3. He always says a 0.
Is it a principal as a whole? She may be just this particular incident may have just thrown her for a loop. Maybe she's not a bad principal overall. I don't know.
What
do you think?
No, she's a principal that likes
She
to try
bad?
to please it. She tries to please everybody.
I try to be the devil's advocate.
What Larry say?
She doesn't know what's going on in
She
school.
tries to please everybody and pleases nobody.
That's right. That makes you bad.
Yeah.
That means you're not effective at anything. If that's your perspective, then you're just bad. You're giving in to what people want. Now, more than likely, you and I both know that the parents in the other room screamed and yelled and didn't want the EC kids in their room, and she gave in to them, and now everybody's mad. So I was talked about when you start monkeying with the master schedule, the half that was happy are now mad, and the first group don't get happy either. So now everybody's mad. You got to have a process. Everybody's got to know what the process is. But you think about this. I mean, she didn't handle personnel well. She's not doing staff development. She's not doing walkthroughs. She doesn't want to go to the room. I mean, she's completely abdicating her responsibility as an instructional leader. Now, to the point that she might be good at something else, that's not what's important, though. What do they do? I've told you. What do they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. That's down in Tommy's part of the world, right around there in Garner. They make sausage. What do we do in school? We teach kids. You can't be a good principal if you're not an instructional leader, folks, because that's our core competency.
Yeah.
This person gets a 1 or a 0. We're going to get them on the scale because it doesn't matter that they might be an efficient manager of the budget or keep the facilities nice or any of those things. If they can't manage an instructional and lead an instructional program, we have no need for them. That's kind of the culmination. We've been through 4 evidences, 2 classes. You've learned the content of what schools ought to be doing. And now this semester was the operational, how to do it. Your next evidence will be an overarching to try to work on the culture of your building. And then in the end, you'll put this all together and it will become your school improvement plan. But our content is pretty much over with the skip. The cap is trying to improve the culture of your school. And that's really for teacher retention. That's what the TWC is for. When we do teacher surveys, is to retain teachers to make their working conditions better. But you have the content now. But in the end, my final statement here tonight, I see our time is up. My final rant is you can't be a good principal if you aren't an instructional leader. If you're not in the rooms, if you don't know what's going on, if you can't have critical one-on-one conversations with people, you can't lead. It's just not possible. And you can't be a good principal at all because it's the most important piece. Our job in the end is to make a good number go up or a bad number go down. You can never forget that. I appreciate you being with me again tonight. I always enjoy it. This is the most fun I have every week. How sad is my life that I look forward to this every week. Just like the kid looks forward to Saturday, I look forward to Tuesday and Wednesday night. I'll see you all next week. Everybody have a good week. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Give yourself a hand. You did a great job. I'm so pleased. Yes.
Can you stick around right quick?